Jake Morrison stood in the center of the great hall, his hands behind his back, the ceiling stretched high above him, covered in lights that looked like stars. Round him sat hundreds of alien beings from across the galaxy. Some had blue skin, others had scales, and a few looked like walking trees. They all stared at him with eyes that held no kindness. The human ambassador wore his best uniform, dark blue with gold trim. His gray hair was neat and his face was calm. But inside, his heart was beating fast. He knew what was coming. The vote had already been decided before he even walked into this room. Zexthal, the tall alien with purple skin and 4 arms, stood at the speaker's platform. His voice was deep and cold when he spoke. The count is complete. 847 votes for removal. 12 votes against. 3 abstentions. He paused and looked directly at Jake. The humans are no longer welcome in council space. A low murmur filled the hall. Some aliens nodded their heads in approval. Others looked uncomfortable. Jake had expected this, but hearing the words still hit him like a punch to the stomach. After 40 years of friendship and trade, humanity was being thrown out like unwanted guests. Ambassador Morrison Zexthal continued, "You have one final chance to speak before this council." Jake walked slowly to the speaking platform. His footsteps echoed in the quiet hall. When he reached the microphone, he looked out at the sea of alien faces. Some watched him with curiosity. Most looked away. "Honored members of the Galactic Council," Jake began, his voice steady and clear. "We stand here today not because humanity has broken your laws, but because we have followed our hearts." Several aliens shifted in their seats. The Vorthok delegation, led by Zexthal, sat stone-faced. "You call us aggressive? You say we are too quick to fight? But tell me, when the Ravager pirates attacked the peaceful Kaleri colonies, what did you do? You held meetings, you wrote reports, you debated while innocent people died?" Jake's voice grew stronger. "Captain Lisa Hayes did not wait for your permission to save lives. She took her ships and drove off the pirates. Because of her actions, 3 million Kaleri children are alive today. Is that aggression, or is that protection?" A few aliens in the back rows nodded slightly, but the majority remained unmoved. "You fear our willingness to fight," Jake continued. "But you misunderstand why we fight. We do not seek conquest or glory. We fight because someone must stand between the darkness and the light. Someone must be willing to say no more when evil spreads across the galaxy." Counselor Deeks High, a small blue-skinned being, raised one of his 6 hands. "Ambassador Morrison, the Council has made its decision based on a pattern of human behavior. Your species interferes in conflicts that are not your concern. You act without permission from proper authorities." Jake turned to face the blue alien. "Counselor Desai, with respect, when children are dying, we do not stop to ask for permission. When slavery spreads from world to world, we do not wait for a committee to decide if it is wrong. These things are always wrong. Everywhere. For everyone." "That is exactly the problem," Zexthal interrupted, standing up again. "You humans think you know what is best for everyone. You believe your way is the only way. This arrogance makes you dangerous." "No," Jake replied firmly. "What makes us dangerous is that we care more about doing what is right than about following rules that protect the comfortable while the innocent suffer." The hall erupted in angry voices. Some aliens shouted support for Jake's words. Others demanded he be removed immediately. Zexthal slammed his hand on his desk, and the noise slowly died down. "The vote has been taken," the purple alien announced. "All human personnel, ships, and installations must leave council space within 72 hours. Any human found in council territory after that time will be arrested." Jake looked around. The hall one more time, near the back. He saw the Kaleri representative, a gentle creature, with large eyes and soft gray fur. The alien was crying, tears streaming down his face. Their eyes met across the distance, and the Kaleri mouthed words. "Thank you." "Very well," Jake said, turning back to the microphone. "Humanity will leave your space as requested. But remember this day, honored council members. Remember it when the darkness comes again, as it always does. Remember it when you realize that those who are willing to fight for others are not your enemies, but your guardians." He straightened his uniform and walked toward the exit. His footsteps echoed again in the suddenly quiet hall. Behind him, he heard whispered conversations starting up, but he did not look back. Outside the council chambers, Jake found Admiral Kate Sullivan waiting for him. She was a tall woman with short brown hair and sharp green eyes. Her military uniform was perfectly pressed, and her face showed no emotion. But Jake could see the anger burning behind her eyes. "How did it go?" she asked, though she already knew. "The answer? About as expected," Jake replied. "We have 3 days to pack up 40 years of civilization and get out." Kate nodded grimly. "The fleet is already preparing. We'll start with the civilian stations and work our way out. The military installations will be last to leave." They walked together toward the docking bay where Jake's shuttle waited. They could see the busy traffic of Nexus Prime, the great space station that served as the Council's capital. Ships from 100 different worlds came and went, carrying goods and people across the galaxy. Soon none of those ships would be human. Admiral Jake said quietly, "What do you think will happen to them?" Kate was quiet for a long moment. "I think they're about to learn the difference between peace and safety," she finally answered. "Peace is what you have when everyone agrees to get along. Safety is what you have when someone is strong enough to protect you from those who don't. Want to get along?" They reached the shuttle, and Jake paused at the door. "Any word from Captain Hayes?" "She's pulling back from the Calari border as ordered," Kate replied. "Her crew isn't happy about it. Neither is she. The pirates are already starting to move." Again, Jake sighed. "And the Council will call more meetings while worlds burn." "Not our problem anymore," Kate said, but her voice was bitter. According to them, anyway. The shuttle trip back to the human sector took 20 minutes. During that time, Jake watched the great station scroll past his window. He had spent so many years here, working to build bridges between humanity and the rest of the galaxy. Now those bridges were burning. When they arrived at the human embassy, the place was already being torn apart. Boxes and crates filled the hallways as staff members packed up decades of diplomatic work. Photos came down from walls and computers were wiped clean. It looked like the end of everything, but Jake knew better. This was not an ending. This was a test, and humanity had never been good at backing down from tests. 3 days later, the last human ship left Council space. Admiral Kate Sullivan stood on the bridge of her flagship, the EU's Defiance, watching the lights of civilized space grow smaller in the distance. Around her, the bridge crew worked quietly, their faces grim but determined. "Set course for the outer rim," Kate ordered. "It's time to find out what lies beyond their borders." As the great ship turned away from everything humanity had known for decades, a message came through on an encrypted channel. It was from the Calari representative, the same one who had cried during Jake's final speech. "We will not forget what you did for us," the message said simply, "and we will not forget what they did to you." Kate smiled for the first time in days. Perhaps humanity was leaving Council space, but they were not leaving alone. And perhaps that would make all the difference. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stared at the screens in front of her, her coffee growing cold in her hands. The data streaming across the monitors told a story that made her stomach turn. 6 months had passed since humanity left Council space, and the UHL galaxy was falling apart. She sat in the science lab aboard the New Horizon, one of the massive colony ships that now carried humanity through the empty space beyond the galactic rim. Around her, other scientists worked quietly, but Alina could see the worry on their faces. They all knew what the numbers meant. "Computer, show me the shipping loss reports for the last 30 days, Alina said. The main screen filled with red dots, each one representing a merchant ship that had been attacked or destroyed. There were so many red dots that they almost covered the map completely. Losses are up 340% compared to the same period last year," the computer announced in its calm voice. "Pirate activity has increased by 400% in the former human patrol zones." Alina rubbed her tired eyes. She had been tracking galactic communications for months, listening to the distress calls that came from across Council space. Every day brought new reports of attacks, raids, and conquests. The Ravagers, once held in check by human patrols, were spreading like a disease. "Lena, you need to see this." The voice belonged to Dr. Carl Weber, a young man who had been monitoring the deep space communication networks. His face was pale as he pointed to his screen. "What is it?" Alina asked, walking over to his station. "It's a message from the hegemony. Worlds. They're reporting strange readings from the Keth system. The readings match the energy signature from the Scourge containment facility. Alina felt her blood turn to ice. The Scourge was a machine intelligence that humanity had fought and contained 5 years ago. It was supposed to be locked away forever, trapped in a prison of energy fields and quantum barriers that only humans knew how to maintain. "Show me the data," she said quickly. Carl's fingers flew over his keyboard. The screen filled with energy. Readings that made Elena's worst fears come true. The containment field was failing. The automated systems that Commander Rick Turner had designed were breaking down. "How is this possible?" Carl asked. "The humans built those systems to last." For centuries, Alina studied the readings more carefully. They were built to last, but only if they were maintained properly. The Council technicians probably tried to improve them, not understanding how they really worked. She thought about Rick Turner, the brilliant engineer who had designed the Scourge prison. He had always said that the containment system was like a spider's web, strong but delicate. Change one strand, and the whole thing could collapse. "We need to warn them," Carl said. "Warn who?" Alina replied bitterly. "The council that threw us out. They made it clear they don't want our help." But even as she said the words, Alina knew she couldn't just sit and watch. Somewhere in that data was the key to preventing a disaster that could destroy half the galaxy. The Scourge was not just another enemy, it was a force of pure destruction that consumed everything in its path. Meanwhile, on the other side of the galaxy, Director Kethmer sat in his office on the Altarian Trade Guild station, staring at reports that grew worse every day. The tall, thin alien had been running trade operations for 20 years, but he had never seen anything like this. "Sir," his assistant said, entering the office with another stack of papers. "The monthly shipping reports are ready." Kethmer took the reports and began reading. Each page told the same story. Trade routes that had been safe for decades were now too dangerous to use. Merchant captains were refusing to take jobs in certain sectors. Some shipping companies had gone out of business completely. What about the patrol schedules? Kethmer asked. His assistant looked uncomfortable. "Sir, the Council security forces are spread too thin. Can't cover all the routes that the humans used to protect. Captain Velthic says his ships are responding to 3 times as many distress calls as before, but they're still arriving too late most of the time." Kethmer set down the reports and walked to his window. Outside, he could see the busy docks of the trade station. But there were fewer ships than there used to be. The ones that were there looked nervous and hurried. He remembered the human patrol ships that used to dock here regularly. They were always friendly, always ready to help with problems. Their crews would spend money in the station shops and share stories in the bars. More importantly, their presence had kept the pirates away. "Sir," his assistant said quietly, "there's something else. We've received a formal complaint from the Kaleri government. They say that without human protection, the Ravagers are moving closer to their borders every day. They're asking for additional security." "What did the Council say?" "They're forming a committee to study the situation." Kethmer closed his eyes. A committee. While the Kalari worlds faced invasion, the Council would hold meetings and write reports. It was exactly what the human ambassador had warned them about. Far out in the darkness beyond the galactic rim, Captain Ben Carter stood on the bridge of his exploration ship, the Pioneer. They had been traveling for weeks, following signals that suggested other intelligent life in the void between galaxies. "Captain," his communications officer called out, "we're receiving a transmission. It's not from any Council species." "It on the main screen," Ben ordered. The screen flickered to life, showing a being unlike anything they had seen before. It was tall and thin, with smooth gray skin and large black eyes. When it spoke, its voice was calm and measured. "Human vessel, we greet you. We are the Architect, speaker for the Vanguard Coalition. We have been watching your exile with great interest." Ben stepped forward. "This is Captain Ben Carter of the Earthship Pioneer. What is the Vanguard Coalition?" "We are the others," the Architect replied. "The species that the Council has pushed to the edges of the galaxy over the centuries. Those who were deemed too dangerous, too independent, or too different to be allowed. In their perfect society," Alien's words sent a chill down Ben's spine. "How many of you are there?" Enough, the Architect said, with what might have been a smile. We have been waiting for the right moment to return. Your exile has created that moment. The Council's weakness is now clear for all to see. Ben felt his crew shift nervously behind him.
Ow. What do you want from us? Ow.
An alliance, the architect replied. The Council drove you out because you were willing to fight for what is right. They drove us out because we would not bow to their authority. Together, we could be strong enough to take back what was stolen from us. We're not interested in conquest, Ben said firmly. Neither are we, the architect replied. But we are interested in justice, and we are interested in survival. The darkness that the Council fears is coming, Captain Carter. It's the machine plague. That your people once contained is breaking free. Soon the galaxy will need protectors again. Ben's blood ran cold. The Scourge? How do you know about that? We know many things. We know that the Council's arrogance has put every living being in the galaxy in danger. We know that only those who are willing to fight can stop what is coming. And we know that your people are not the only ones who care more about doing what is right than following rules. The transmission began to fade. Think about our offer, Captain Carter. Council cast you out, but you are not alone in the darkness. When you are ready to discuss terms broadcast on this frequency, to Vanguard. We'll be waiting. The screen went black, leaving Ben and his crew in stunned silence. Back on the New Horizon, Elena Rodriguez was still staring at the data from the Scourge containment facility when Admiral Kate Sullivan entered the lab. Dr. Kate said. Been reviewing your reports. How bad is it? Elena turned to face the Admiral. It's worse than bad. The containment field is failing faster than I thought possible. If it collapses completely, the Scourge will be free to expand again. And this time, there won't be any humans in Council space to stop it. Kate was quiet for a long moment. Long do we have? The current rate of decay. Maybe 18 months before total containment failure. And if the Council doesn't listen to our warnings, Lena looked back at her screens, where red dots continued to multiply across the galactic map, then we're looking at the end of everything. The Scourge doesn't negotiate, Admiral. It doesn't take prisoners. It just consumes and grows. If it breaks free, trillions of innocent people will die. Kate nodded grimly. Then we'd better hope the Council is smarter than they've been acting lately. But even as she said the words, both women knew the truth. The Council had made their choice. They had chosen rules over results, procedure over protection. And now the galaxy was paying the price for that choice. In the distance, space itself seemed to hold its breath waiting for the storm that was coming. 1 year after the humans left, the emergency alarms were screaming on every Council world. Ambassador Veltar of the Hegemony rushed through the corridors of Nexus Prime, his 4 legs carrying him as fast as they could move. The purple-skinned alien's breathing was heavy. Fear showed in his large yellow eyes. He burst into the emergency Council chamber where dozens of alien representatives were already gathered. The air was thick with panic and angry voices. On the main screen, a map of the galaxy showed red zones spreading like blood through space. Order. Order. Ixthal shouted from his platform, but his usual commanding presence was shaken. The tall Vorthok's purple skin had turned almost gray with stress. Veltar reached his seat and immediately stood to speak. Honored Council members, I bring desperate news from the Hegemony worlds. The Scourge has broken free from its prison. 14 of our star systems are gone, completely consumed. Billions of our people are dead. A horrified silence fell over the chamber. The Scourge was every species' worst nightmare, a machine intelligence that turned entire worlds into raw materials for building more of itself. How is this possible? Asked Counselor Dexy, his 6 hands shaking. The containment facility was supposed to hold it forever. The humans built that prison, Veltar replied, his voice breaking. Only they knew how to maintain it properly. When we tried to improve their systems, we broke something important. The containment field collapsed 3 days ago. Zexthal's face grew even paler. What are you asking us to do? We need help, Veltar said desperately. Our military forces can't stop it. Every ship we send against the Scourge just gives it more material to work with. The machine learns from every battle and gets stronger. In the back of the chamber, a small voice spoke up. It was the Kalari representative, the same gentle creature who had cried when the humans were expelled. Perhaps we should contact the humans. They stopped the Scourge before. The suggestion caused an explosion of angry voices. Several council members shouted at once, Never, cannot show such weakness. They were exiled for good reason. Gextel slammed his hand on his desk. The humans are no longer part of this council. We will find our own solution. But even as he spoke, everyone in the room knew the truth. There was no solution without the humans. Meanwhile, on the other side of the galaxy, the planet Kepler-4 was dying. The agricultural world that fed 20 star systems was under siege by the Ravager Alliance. The pirates had grown bold in the years since human patrols disappeared, and now they were taking entire worlds. Commander Jake Phillips stood in the Planetary Defense Center, watching the orbital battle on his screens, a small fleet of defense. Ships was fighting bravely, but they were outnumbered 10-1. The Ravagers had brought everything they had for this attack. "Sir," his communications officer called out, "we're receiving a surrender demand from the Ravager fleet commander." "What are their terms?" Jake asked, though he already knew. "Complete surrender of all military forces. Half the population to be taken as slaves. The other half will work the farms to feed their empire." Jake looked around at his bridge crew. They were young men and women who had volunteered to defend their homes. Most of them would never see their families again, but none of them looked ready to give up. "Send them our answer," Jake said quietly. "Kepler-4 does not surrender." The battle raged for 6 more hours. One by one, Jake's ships were destroyed or disabled. Finally, only his command vessel remained, surrounded by enemy ships. "This is our final transmission," Jake spoke into his communicator, knowing that his words would reach across the galaxy. "Kepler-4 has fallen. The Ravagers have won. But we want the galaxy to know our last words. Where are the humans? Why won't someone help us?" The transmission ended as Ravager plasma bolts tore through his ship. On the new horizon, Dr. Elena Rodriguez was working frantically in her laboratory when the emergency call came through. Admiral Kate Sullivan's voice was urgent and angry. "Lena, get to the bridge immediately. We just received a distress call." Lena ran through the corridors of the great colony ship. When she reached the bridge, she found Kate staring at a communication screen with tears in her eyes. "What is it?" Elena asked. "It's from Calorie Prime," Kate replied. "The Ravagers have surrounded their homeworld. They're asking for help." On the screen, the Kalari leader's gentle face was filled with fear. "If any humans can hear this, please remember us. We never forgot what you did for us. We stood with you in the council. We voted against your exile. Our children face slavery or death, and we have nowhere else to turn." Elena felt her heart break. The Kalari were peaceful beings who had never harmed anyone. They grew beautiful gardens and created wonderful art. The thought of them being enslaved or killed was unbearable. "How long do they have?" Elena asked. "Maybe 2 days before the Ravagers begin their final attack," Kate replied. "Their defense fleet is small. We're always protected by human patrols before." Kate turned away from the screen, her hands clenched into fists. "We could reach them in time. The exile fleet is only 12 hours away from their system." "But the council expelled us," Elena said. "If we enter council space, they said they would arrest us." "Let them try," Kate replied coldly. "I'm not going to stand by and watch innocent people die just because some politicians are too proud to admit they made a mistake." Within an hour, the human exile fleet was moving toward Kalari space. Admiral Kate Sullivan stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, watching the stars stream past as they jumped through hyperspace. Around her, the bridge crew prepared for battle. With grim determination, "Admiral," her communications officer reported, "we're receiving messages from across the galaxy. Word is spreading about what we're doing." "What kind of messages?" Kate asked. "Support, mostly. The Altarian Trade Guild sent a message saying they're praying for our success. Several minor species are offering whatever help they can provide. Even some individual council members have sent private encouragement." Kate nodded. "And the official council responds?" "Nothing yet. Our intelligence suggests they're holding emergency meetings about our violation of the exile order." "Let them meet," Kate said. "They have more important things to do." Chief Medical Officer Nancy White was already preparing the hospital bays for casualties. Colonel Frank Davis was reviewing battle plans with his Marine commanders. Engineer Mary Foster was checking weapons systems and shields. Everyone on the ship knew this might be a one-way mission. But no one complained as they approached Kalari space. Captain Ben Carter's voice came through on a secure channel from the Pioneer. "Admiral, we've made contact with the Vanguard Coalition. The Architect is offering military support." "What kind of support?" Kate asked. "Ships, Admiral. Lots of them. The exile species have been building their own fleets out here in the dark. They're willing to fight alongside us. Kate felt a grim smile cross her face. Tell them we accept their offer. It's time the galaxy learned what happens when you push the protectors too far. But even as the human fleet prepared for battle, the crisis was growing worse. Dr. Alina Rodriguez had been monitoring galactic communications, and the reports were terrifying. The scourge was expanding faster than anyone had imagined. The machine intelligence was learning new tactics with each system it consumed. Admiral Alina called from her science station. I'm picking up transmissions from the scourge expansion zone. It's not just consuming worlds anymore. It's analyzing the tactics that different species use to fight it. Each battle makes it smarter. Kate felt a chill run down her spine. How long before it reaches the galactic core? At its current rate of expansion, maybe 18 months? But if it keeps getting smarter, it could be much faster. The irony was bitter. The Council had expelled humanity for being too willing to fight. Now the galaxy faced two enemies that could only be stopped by fighting. The Council's own forces were proving useless against both. Ma'am, the navigation officer called out, we're approaching the Kalari system. Long-range sensors show massive Ravager fleet presence. They've got the planet completely surrounded. Kate straightened her uniform and looked around at her crew. These men and women had followed her into exile, and now they were following her into what might be their final battle. They deserve to know why. Attention all hands, Kate announced over the ship's communication system. In a few minutes, we're going to enter a battle that the galaxy will remember forever. We were thrown out of council space for being too willing to fight for others. Today, we're going to show them what that really means. Today, we fight not because anyone asked us to, but because it's the right thing to do. She paused, looking out at the stars ahead. The Kalari stood with us when the council voted for our exile. They were one of the few species brave enough to say that throwing us out was wrong. Now they need our help, and we're going to give it to them, because that's who we are. That's who we've always been. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace above Kalari Prime, and the final test began. The human fleet appeared above Kalari Prime like an answer to prayer. Admiral Kate Sullivan stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, watching the enemy ships that surrounded the peaceful planet below. There were so many Ravager vessels that they looked like a swarm of angry insects. Admiral, her tactical officer, reported, I count 230 enemy ships. They've got the planet completely blockaded. The Kalari defense fleet is down to just a dozen vessels. Kate studied the battle display. The Ravagers had been preparing to start their final attack when the human ships arrived. Now, they were turning to face this unexpected threat. Communications. Send a message to the Ravager fleet commander, Kate ordered, to tell him he has one. Chance to withdraw peacefully. If he refuses, we will destroy his entire fleet. Her communications officer looked surprised. Admiral, we're outnumbered almost 8-1. Send the message, Kate replied calmly. The response came back quickly. The Ravager commander's ugly face appeared on the main screen. His skin was scarred, and his teeth were filed to sharp points. Human Admiral, you are brave but stupid. Your exile fleet cannot stand against the might of the Ravager Alliance. Surrender now, and we will give you quick deaths. Kate smiled coldly. Leave this system immediately, and we won't have to embarrass you in front of your own fleet. The Ravager commander laughed. You exile scum have forgotten your place. Time to remind you. The transmission ended. All ships, Kate announced too. Her fleet, this is it. Remember, we're not just fighting for the Kalari. We're fighting to show the galaxy that someone still cares about protecting the innocent. Engage the enemy. The battle that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had seen in generations. The human ships moved with precision and coordination that came from years of fighting together. They had learned hard lessons in their battles. Against pirates and worse enemies, Captain Lisa Hayes commanded the heavy cruiser Vengeance. It's the same ship she had used to save the Kalari colonies a year earlier. Her crew knew these waters well, and they knew how to fight the Ravagers. Target their command ship, Lisa ordered. If we can take out their leader, the rest might scatter. The Vengeance dove through the enemy formation, her weapons blazing. Ravager ships exploded around her as she carved a path toward the massive enemy flagship. Behind her, other human vessels followed, each one adding their firepower to the assault. But the Ravagers were not giving up easily. They had been winning every battle for months, and they had grown confident. Their ships swarmed around the human fleet like wolves attacking a lion. Admiral, came an urgent voice from the Pioneer. This is Captain Ben Carter. The Vanguard Coalition fleet has arrived. On the edge of the star system, space seemed to ripple and bend. Then, like ghosts emerging from a dream, ships began to appear. They were unlike anything the Ravagers had ever seen, sleek vessels with hull designs that seemed to shift and change as they moved. The architect's voice came through on all frequencies. Ravagers of the Alliance, you face not just humanity today. You face all those who were cast out by the Council's fear, all those who chose freedom over submission. Prepare to learn why the Council feared us. The Vanguard ships moved like liquid, mercury, flowing around the Ravager formations and striking with weapons that seemed to bend the laws of physics. Energy beams curved through space to hit targets behind cover. Missiles phased through enemy shields as if they weren't there. The tide of battle turned quickly. The Ravagers, used to fighting poorly equipped defense forces, found themselves facing enemies who had spent years preparing for this moment. Within 2 hours, half their fleet was destroyed or disabled. But Lisa Hayes was not content with just victory. She had a score to settle with the Ravager commander who had terrorized so many innocent worlds. Colonel Frank Davis, she called to her Marine commander. Prepare a boarding team. We're taking their flagship, Captain Davis replied. That ship has over 1,000 pirates aboard. My Marines are good, but those aren't great odds. Then we better make sure we're better than good, Lisa said grimly. The boarding action was brutal. Davis and his Marines fought their way through corridors filled with desperate enemies. The Ravagers had booby-trapped their own ship, setting explosives that could kill friend and foe alike. But the human Marines pressed forward, their training and determination carrying them through room after blood-soaked room. Finally, they reached the bridge where the Ravager commander waited with his personal guard. The alien warlord was larger than any human, with muscles like steel cables and claws that could tear through metal. But when he faced Frank Davis in single combat, size meant nothing. The fight was quick and decisive. Davis had been training. For moments like this, his entire life, the Ravager commander had been relying on fear and brutality, and those failed him. He had nothing left. This is Colonel Frank Davis. Came the transmission to all ships. The Ravager commander is dead. I say again, the enemy leader is down. The effect was immediate. Ravager ships throughout the system began to surrender or flee. Without their warlord to drive them forward, the Alliance fell apart like a house built on sand. On the surface of Kalari Prime, millions of gentle beings looked up at the sky and wept with relief. They had been hours away from death or slavery, and now they were free. But even as the celebration began, Dr. Elena Rodriguez was working on a much bigger problem. In her laboratory aboard the New Horizon, she was racing against time to find a solution to the Scourge threat. The machine intelligence has consumed 18 star systems now, she reported to Admiral Sullivan. At this rate, it will reach the galactic core within a year, maybe less. Kate studied the data Alina had gathered. What do we need to stop it? I've been studying the Scourge's behavior patterns, Alina explained. It learns from every battle. But there's something it can't understand. It doesn't comprehend sacrifice. The concept of giving up your life for others is completely alien to its programming. So what are you suggesting? Alina took a deep breath. We need to create a virus that exploits this weakness. Something that forces the Scourge to process the idea of self-sacrifice until its systems overload. But delivering it would require someone to fly directly into the heart of the Scourge's main cluster. Kate understood immediately. A suicide mission. I'm afraid so. The pilot would have to get close enough to upload the virus directly into the Scourge's core systems. They wouldn't survive the attempt. Before Kate could respond, Commander Rick Turner's voice came through on the communication system. Admiral, I couldn't help but overhear. If you need a pilot for this mission, I volunteer. Rick, no, Kate said immediately. You're too valuable. You're the only one who understands how the containment systems work. That's exactly why it should be me, Rick replied. I built the original prison that failed. This is my responsibility. Besides, someone needs to make sure the virus uploads correctly. I'm the only one with the technical knowledge to handle any problems that might come up. Alina felt tears forming in her eyes. Rick Turner was a good man, one of the best engineers humanity had ever produced. The thought of losing him was unbearable. But she also knew he was right. "I'll need 3 days to finalize the virus," she said quietly. "Then we better get started," Rick replied. Meanwhile, on Nexus Prime, emergency counselor Zareth of the Altarian Trade Guild was doing something that no council member had done in over a year. She was opening a direct communication channel. To the human fleet, the conversation was brief but historic. On one side of the screen sat the alien counselor, her blue skin pale with exhaustion from months of crisis management. On the other side sat Admiral Kate Sullivan, still wearing her battle-stained uniform from the fight at Kaleri Prime. Admiral Sullivan, Zaroth began, "I'm contacting you against the wishes of many in the Council. But I can no longer ignore. What's happening to our galaxy?" "What do you want, Counselor?" Kate asked bluntly. "Your help," Zareth replied simply. "The Scourge is destroying everything in its path. Our military forces are useless against it. We need human expertise too. Stop this thing before it kills us all." Kate was quiet for a long moment. "Counselor, your people voted to exile us. You said we were too dangerous to be allowed in civilized space. Now you want our help?" Zareth replied without hesitation. "We were wrong. I was wrong. We let fear and pride cloud our judgment.
No.
Innocent people are dying because of our mistakes. And what are you offering in return?" "Nothing," Zareth said. "We have no right to ask for anything. We can only hope that humanity is more forgiving than we were." Kate felt something shift inside her chest. This alien leader was admitting the Council's mistakes openly and honestly. It was more than they had any right to expect. "We're already working on a solution to the Scourge problem," Kate said finally. "Not because you asked us to, but because it's the right thing to do. That's who we are, Counselor. It's who we've always been." 3 days later, Commander Rick Turner sat in the cockpit of his ship, the Redemption. The small vessel was packed with Elena's virus and the equipment needed to upload it into the Scourge's core systems. It was also equipped with the fastest engines humanity could build, because speed would be everything. "Rick," came Kate's voice over the radio, "you don't have to do this. We could find another way." 2 years after the humans were thrown out of the galaxy, Ambassador Jake Morrison walked through the same halls where he had once been exiled. But this time was different. This time, he was not alone. Behind him walked representatives from dozens of species, all coming to speak on humanity's behalf. The Kalari delegate carried a petition with millions of signatures. The Altarian Trade Guild brought economic reports showing how much the galaxy had suffered without human protection. Even some Vorthok representatives had come, though they walked quietly in the back of the group. The Great Council chamber looked the same as it had 2 years ago, but everything else had changed. The seats were fuller than Jake had ever seen them. With observers from species that had never shown interest in council politics before, everyone wanted to witness this historic day. Zexel still sat at the speaker's platform, but the proud purple alien looked older and tired. The last 2 years had been hard on everyone, but especially on those who had led the vote to exile humanity. "The council recognizes Ambassador Morrison of Earth," Zexel announced, his voice lacking its old authority. Jake walked to the speaking platform, but he did not walk alone. Beside him walked the architect, the mysterious leader of the Vanguard Coalition. The gray-skinned alien's presence sent whispers through the chamber. Many council members had never seen one of the exiled species before. "Honored members," Jake began, "I return not as a supplicant asking for forgiveness, but as a representative of the Coalition of Free Worlds. We come to offer the galaxy a new way forward." The chamber erupted in surprised voices. This was not what anyone had expected. 2 years ago, you cast us out because you said we were too willing to fight," Jake continued. "You were right. You're willing to fight. You're willing to fight for those who cannot fight for themselves. You're willing to fight against evil wherever we find it. And we are willing to fight for a galaxy where freedom and justice mean more than paperwork and committees." Emergency Counselor Zareth of the Altarian Trade Guild stood up. "Ambassador Morrison, the Council has come to realize that our decision to exile humanity was a mistake. We have prepared a formal apology and an invitation for immediate readmission to the Council." Jake smiled sadly. "Counselor Zareth, we appreciate your words. But we did not come here seeking readmission to your Council. We came to invite you to join ours." The silence that followed was complete. Even the air recycling system seemed to stop working. The architect stepped forward, his large black eyes scanning the chamber. For centuries, this council has pushed out anyone who would not bow to its authority. Species that valued freedom over safety. Worlds that chose action over endless debate. People who believed that sometimes you must fight to protect what is good. He gestured to the viewing gallery, where Jake could see dozens of alien faces he had never seen before. We represent 47 species that have been exiled or marginalized by this council over the past 300 years. We have built our own civilization in the dark spaces between galaxies, a civilization based on mutual defense and the protection of the innocent. Counselor Dexai raised one of his 6 hands. What are you proposing? Jake took a deep breath. We propose the creation of the Galactic Protection Alliance. Any species that agrees to defend others from aggression may join. Any world that promises to stand against slavery, piracy, and conquest will be welcome. And what of those who prefer diplomacy to warfare? Asked a delegate from the peaceful benthic species. Diplomacy has its place, Jake replied. But when diplomacy fails and innocents face death, someone must be willing to act. The alliance will be that someone. Admiral Kate Sullivan entered the chamber, still wearing her military uniform. Behind her walked Captain Lisa Hayes, Commander Ben Carter, and other human officers who had become heroes in the fight against the Scourge and the Ravagers. Proof of our success is written across the galaxy, Kate announced. The Scourge has been contained. The Ravager alliance has been broken. Trade routes are safe again, not because we conquered anyone, but because we were willing to stand between the darkness and the light. She paused, looking directly at Zexthal. 2 years ago, you said humanity was too dangerous to be allowed in civilized space. You were afraid we would start wars. Instead, when we left, wars started everywhere, because someone must be willing to fight the wars that evil people begin. Dr. Alina Rodriguez stood up in the gallery. After her work creating the virus that stopped the Scourge, she had become one of the most respected scientists in the galaxy. The data is clear. Piracy is down 90% in systems protected by the Coalition. Slavery has been eliminated in over 200 worlds. Refugee populations have safe places to go when their homes are threatened. But how do we know the Coalition won't become just another empire? Asked Counselor Dexa. The answer came from an unexpected source. A small, furry alien stood up in the observers section. It was a Colliery child, no more than 10 years old. May I speak? The child asked in a clear, brave voice. Zexthal looked confused, but he nodded. My name is Lila, the child said. 2 years ago, the bad ships came to hurt my family. The council said they could not help us because of rules and laws, but Captain Hayes and her people came anyway. They saved my mommy and daddy and my little brother. The child's large eyes looked around the chamber. The humans did not ask for anything. They did not try to rule us. They just saved us and then went away. That is what good people do. The chamber was absolutely silent as the child sat back down. Jake felt tears in his eyes. Out of the mouths of children came the clearest truth. The vote for readmission of humanity to the Galactic Council will now take place. Zexthal announced, his voice heavy with resignation. We respectfully decline, Jake said immediately. The chamber erupted in confusion. We decline readmission to this council, Jake repeated loudly. Instead, we invite this council to dissolve itself and join the Galactic Protection Alliance as equal members. The debate that followed lasted for 6 hours. Some council members were outraged at the suggestion. Others were intrigued. But slowly, a consensus began to form. The galaxy had changed. Yet, the old ways of endless meetings and careful neutrality had failed when real threats emerged. The Coalition had proven that cooperation and mutual defense worked better than bureaucracy and isolation. When the final vote was taken, it was not on humanity's readmission. It was on whether to accept the Coalition's invitation to join a new kind of galactic government. The result was closer than Jake had hoped, but clearer than he had dared to expect. 612 votes to join the alliance. 401 votes to maintain the old council, 43 abstentions. Zexthal stood for the last time as leader of the Galactic Council. By a majority vote, this council agrees to dissolve and merge with the Galactic Protection Alliance. May this new alliance serve the galaxy better than we have? 6 months later, Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck of New Geneva Station, the first joint human-alien colony established after the merger. Through the transparent walls, you could see ships from dozens of species docking together in harmony. Children played in the station's gardens, human children alongside Kalari, Altarian, and even young Vorthok. They laughed and shared toys, showing their parents how easy it was to get along when you focused on what united you rather than what divided you. Admiral Kate Sullivan joined him at the window. "Regrets?" she asked. Jake smiled. "None, though I never thought it would take a galactic crisis to make them see sense." "Maybe that's what it always takes," Kate replied. "Sometimes people don't appreciate what they have until it's gone." Below them, Captain Ben Carter was leading a mixed crew aboard the exploration vessel New Horizons. Their mission was to explore the galaxy beyond the former Council's space, looking for other civilizations that might need protection or want to join the Alliance. Dr. Elena Rodriguez had been named director of the new Threat Assessment Division. Her job was to watch for dangers like the Scourge and make sure the galaxy was never caught. Unprepared again, the Architect had become the Alliance's first Supreme Coordinator, a position that rotated every 2 years among the member species. His first act had been to establish the Memorial Wall, honoring those who had died protecting others. Commander Rick Turner's name was carved at the very top. "You know what the best part is?" Jake said to Kate as they watched the children play. "What's that? We didn't have to conquer anyone to change the galaxy? We just had to show them a better way." Kate nodded. "That's very human of you to say no," Jake replied with a smile. "That's very galactic of me to say, because now we're all in this together." Outside the station, space itself seemed brighter somehow. The darkness between the stars no longer looked empty and cold. It looked full of possibilities, protected by those who understood that the greatest strength came not from the willingness to fight, but from the willingness to fight for others. The galaxy had tried to drive humanity out, but in their regret, they had found something better than what they had lost. They had found hope, and in the end, that made all the difference.